Thank you so much. And we'll begin with changes to the agenda, which today we have none. And then we'll skip on down to recognitions, 3.0, none today. 4, we would have visitors. We don't know about that until we arrive Monday night. 5.1 is appointment of assistant principal to 12-month Meigs Middle School, recommended by the superintendent for approval. And I might just pause and say that today we are happy to have Mr. Horton replacing temporarily Mr. Chambers, who is attending the FADS, the Florida Association for District School Superintendents Conference in Tampa. And he is joined simultaneously by Mr. Bryant, who is attending the Florida School Board Association's conference held simultaneously in Tampa today. So that is why I'm filling in for Mr. Bryant. And we hope they both have good, safe travels and enjoy learning lots while they're at their conference. Moving on down to item 6. 6.1 is members of the public desiring to address the school board, and we don't know that until we arrive Monday night. 7.0, committee and staff reports, and that is for today's workshop only. 7.1, in-county travel paid for the period of August 26th through September the 8th, presented by Ms. Perry for approval or for information today. 7.2, out-of-county travel paid for the period of August 6th through September the 8th for information today. 7.3, Okaloosa Public Schools Foundation, presented by Julie Perry. And 8.0, that is the consent agenda. We're moving down. 8.1 is approval of the agenda. 8.2, approval of the minutes of student disciplinary hearing of September 9th, 2021. Minutes of the workshop meeting of September the 9th, 2021. And minutes of the regular meeting of September 13th, recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.3, request to advertise a public hearing for revision of School Board Policy 01-19, Family and School Partnership for Students, presented by Mr. McGinnis and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.4, request to advertise public hearing for the adoption of revised School Board Policy 02-17, Purchasing Procedures, presented by Ms. Perry and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.5, request to advertise a public hearing for adoption of instructional materials for secondary science and career and technical education, reproductive health, and disease education, presented by Tammy Ellis and recommended by the superintendent for approval.
And I have a question to comment.
Okay.
Can I, real quick? Thank you for this information. This was nicely done and nicely laid out for us to follow. And I'm sorry I didn't get with you prior to
That's
this.
okay.
But my question is that I followed your directions and I went to the website, and that's very easily, you can identify quickly where it is, and the links and everything work very nicely. The opt-out form, well, let me back up just a second. That bit of information, will that stay, right now I see it says latest news, and it's right there on the home page, but as news moves along, will that stay on that front page so
Yes, ma'am.
parents can quickly assess it so that they can get to the opt-out form?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It will, once it's approved, this will
Correct.
become a public visual on the website to
Okay,
find
perfect.
anytime.
I know
Yes, ma'am.
sometimes I have to kind of search through to find different things, but I think with this, that, right there fits right on front.
And we created an icon for it with the apple so that
It's very,
you
very
can see.
nicely done. Great job. And then the opt-out form document, who will house that? Is that for the teacher to keep?
The schools will house it.
The schools will house
yes,
it?
ma'am.
Okay, perfect.
ma'am.
And this, again, is just for grade 7th and 8th
Yes, ma'am.
science?
The principal, teacher, and parents all have to sign it. And it's a
Correct,
yearly,
correct.
it only lasts for a year. They have to opt out every year
Every
if
year,
they choose to.
right.
But it is for 7th grade science. For regular classes, there are a few standards in 7th grade biology and anatomy physiology
Mhm.
that apply.
Well, again, I can see your teacher skills, how organized
Yeah.
this is and how easy it is to follow, and it's nicely done. I was just wanting to make certain that that is easy to be found on the webpage, that parents don't have to
Yes, ma'am.
search through that. And then also, I was just curious where that was going to be housed. But
Yes, ma'am.
Great job.
Awesome. Thank
Great
you.
job. Thanks.
May I
And-
follow up,
yeah.
Madam Chair? And so I think this is statute driven, is that correct?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, sir. House
right.
Bill 545.
That's right, I saw that in the item, and so Florida law now requires us to do this.
Yes, sir. There are
Thank you.
the Florida law requires 3 things. Parents are notified of their rights. The board has to annually approve the major curriculum, and then we have to house it on the website.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you.
And if a parent could not find it on the website, I'm presuming they could always ask their local principal. at their school.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Thank you. 8.7, invoices to be approved for payment and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.8.
8.6, Madam Chair.
8.6, thank you. Skipping back up to 8.6, School Board Resolution 21-07, establishing its intent to reimburse certain capital expenditures with proceeds of one or more future tax-exempt financing, providing certain other matters in connection therewith, and providing an effective date, presented by Ms. Perry and recommended by the superintendent for approval. And that one we may have comment on.
Yes, thanks, Dr. Kelly. So if you recall, board members, we're in the process right now that have identified through the sales tax program a number of construction items, cafetoriums, multi-purpose facilities, classroom additions, and all of those can be constructed under one financing. And so certificate of participation, this is just the initial step to begin that process. And so funding could be collected through this process ultimately, and then repaid through sales tax proceeds in the coming years. And the actuality is it allows us to begin and complete construction on these important projects earlier instead of waiting on the sales tax revenue from years 6, 7, 8, 9 of the program. So this would be the first step of this. We're working with a group that has helped the district in the past. And so we're excited about this first step to begin. And as I think Mr. Chambers mentioned, we're close to being able to bring a GMP for these construction projects in an upcoming meeting to get this further down the road.
Certainly
And
very
the
exciting.
sales tax is doing well, isn't it?
Sales tax is doing well. I think we use the state estimates from the first 6 months of the year to project sales tax revenue. And now that we've had collections for the first 6 months of the year, we do have an increase. And so we present that and put it on our Citizens Oversight Committee website every time that's reported. But that does allow us to do 2 things. It allows us to expedite some projects that we were waiting on funding for. But it also could give the schools district the opportunity to, once it's completed every project on those approved lists, to do even more that has been identified in that voter-approved referendum. So that's great. And we know that costs will go up over time as well. So the fact that we're getting increases in revenue is important for us.
And keeping those labor forces here while we have them on other projects.
Right. Yes, ma'am, exactly.
And just a quick follow-up. And so, Mr. McInnes, I heard Mr. Horton mention certificate of participation, and I think I remember that that's something that the school district has done for many, many years. Could you speak to that just for a moment?
Yes, sir. That has been the method of financing this district has used, as well as other districts in the state. For many years, it was used in the last sales tax program. It's been used in between there. It does allow you to finance the project and then with appropriate funds just pay that back over time. It's really one of the only ways to build large projects, because you have to, of course, be able to pay for those when you build them.
Exactly.
And this initial resolution doesn't obligate you to issue the COPs yet, but this does protect you if funds begin being advanced towards those projects, that you could then recover them back out of the COP.
Excellent. All right, thank you.
Any other discussion on 8.6? All right, we'll move on now to 8.7. Invoices to be approved for payment presented by Ms. Perry and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.8.
I have a question
Yes.
or a comment on 8.7.
All right.
I'm sorry.
Sure.
I know that we are approving 8.4 or for Monday night, or it's up for approval Monday night, and that's the school board policy. 2.7, the purchasing policy. And I spoke with Ms. Scallion, and I know Ms. Perry and I spoke previously, but I have some concerns with the number of board bills that we have coming through. And I just kind of wonder, because again, I don't know if there needs to be additional training, but looking back at that 2.17, we know that purchases are not to be made unless there is a purchase order. And then as I read on to this, it goes on to say, no employee shall obligate the board without following the policy. Failure to comply may render the purchaser liable for the payment. And I would hate for that to ever take place, but this is a Florida statute in that purchase orders are required. And I understand sometimes there's oops. I mean, we've been administrators. I know that happens, but it just, and again, I know that we spoke and with Ms. Gallion, and there are sometimes new people and then sometimes people who have been around for a while. I'm just kind of wondering, do we need additional training? Kind of what's going on?
And that's, we have been looking, we had several that were maintenance, and we've worked on doing some different procedures
Okay.
to be able to get that in line. So those should be decreasing. And as far as I noticed that there were 2 schools and 2 departments that were on there this time, and we will be working with the schools, and we're going to work with all of the schools to make sure that they get the information out to all their employees to remind them of the policy.
Well,
so that
and-
rather
And the
than
process,
reacting.
yeah.
And if I might follow up, Ms. Gardner, Madam Chair, I thought that you might be referring to a time that we probably both remember
Ooh.
when a former superintendent
Mhm.
required the responsible employees to appear in person
Mhm.
before
And
the school
explain.
board and explain the reasons for the incident.
Yes.
And
I recall
it was
that,
amazing
too.
what happened. I mean, they stopped.
You didn't do board bills.
No.
And then if you did, I mean, we had to appear before that. And I guess that's what's kind of been instilled. And then, again, mentioning it before and just kind of seeing it continue,
Mhm.
that it is something I think we may want to address. And this does not reflect on you, your department. You're doing an amazing job. Please, it does not reflect on you at all. And like I said, it's again just something that I've been looking at, and it does continue. And
Mhm.
I would not want it to ever be a point that an employee has to be responsible for this. And it does bring me concern that we keep approving these board bills, knowing that Florida statute states that, again, purchase orders need to be done first. But you're right, Dr. White, I do remember.
You remember that?
Oh,
I
do
do.
I ever, because I had to do it one time. And it only took one time. I only took one time standing up there.
And I remember the same thing regarding inventory control, when there were
yes.
missing items. I remember one night, I don't think I was a part of it, but there were 13 principals standing up here to explain why their inventory was, I guess, missing items.
I think they were probably standing there shaking a little bit also. I wasn't up there either. But, okay, I
Yes.
appreciate you saying that, maybe just start bringing it to individuals' attention. Sometimes there's new people that come in that,
Yes, yes.
accidentally go off and purchase something.
And I think it's,
And then
I
come
think
back,
it's
but-
a matter of reminding to the principals to
reminding.
communicate with their staff about
Exactly.
what the policies are.
Okay. And again, this does not reflect on you or your department. It was just,
No, I
again, a
appreciate that.
concern that I see that
Yes,
continuing.
yes.
So thank you so much. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other comment? All right, moving on to 8.8, payroll warrant register and accounts payable warrant register for August 2021 totaling $24,448,052.61, and bank transfers for August 2021 totaling $60,000, presented by Ms. Perry and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.9, permission to pay a materials and supplies stipend to qualified adult vocational teachers, behavior analysts, behavior interventionalists, mental health counselors, occupational therapists, physical therapists, school psychologists, social workers, and staffing specialists, presented by Ms. Perry and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.10, emergency purchase SA number 22-80, Brooke Adam, presented by Mr. Wyndham and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.11, memorandums of agreement with Emerald Coast Fitness Foundation Incorporated, presented by Mr. Wyndham and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.12, renewal of fuel purchasing agreement with Baker Fire Department, presented by Vince Wyndham and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.13, RFP 21-01, employee benefits brokerage and consulting services presented by Mr. Wyndham and recommended by the superintendent for approval.
I have something to say about that.
Okay.
Well, I'm excited to see this, and appreciate the BOG and others who are working on this to get this. I see that we're moving in a great direction in ensuring our employees, and I appreciate all the work that's gone into this. I know it's a long process and an arduous one, and I'm excited to see what this leads to.
Absolutely. 8.14, tag-on bid purchases over $25,000, train, presented by Mr. Wyndham and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.15, ITB 22-01, security fencing bid, presented by Mr. Wyndham and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.15, tag-on bid over $25,000, school health, presented by Mr. Wyndham and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.17, tag-on bid purchase over $25,000, presented by Mr. Wyndham and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.18, tag-on bid purchase over $25,000, international restaurant distributors, presented by Mr. Wyndham and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.19, tag-on bid purchase over $25,000, AVI SPL, presented by Mr. Wyndham and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.20, exempted purchase over $25,000, Brain Pop, presented by Mr. Wyndham and recommended by the superintendent for approval.
And I'd just like to add that, and I spoke to Mr. Mitchell about this, and I know at one time there was some material that might have been considered controversial, but Mr. Mitchell has assured me that there's a way that the school district can make sure that those things are not included, and so I certainly will be voting for this item because of that.
8.22, exempted purchase over $25,000, therapy travelers, presented by Mr. Wyndham and recommended by the superintendent for approval.
21, too. We
Did I,
skip that one.
did I skip that? Okay. Blackboard, yes. 8.21, thank you. Exempted purchase over $25,000, Blackboard Incorporated, presented by Mr. Wyndham and recommended by the superintendent for approval. Now, 8.22, therapy travelers, presented by Mr. Wyndham and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.23, Florida Safe Schools Assessment Tool, District Best Practices, presented by Mr. Dean and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.24, Service Agreement 22-79, Northwest Florida State College, presented by Mr. Wyndham and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.25, Florida School Board's Insurance Trust Fee Adjustment for 2021-2022, presented by Mr. Frakes and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.26, Vehicle Maintenance, Inspection, and Repair Agreement between Okaloosa School Board and Okaloosa Academy, presented by Mr. McGinnis and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.27, Independent Contractor Service Agreement between Ben Schuman and the School Board of Okaloosa County, presented by Ms. Branscombe and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.28, School Affiliation Agreement between the School Board and the Crestview Rehabilitation Center for the Practical Nursing Program at OTC for 2021-2022, recommended, presented by Mr. Palmer and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.29, School Affiliation Agreement between the School Board and the Emerald Coast Autism Center for Practical Nursing at OTC for 2021-2022, presented by Mr. Palmer and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.30, Application for 2021-2022 school year renewal of the AFRL EFA Initiative Grant request for Okaloosa STEM, presented by Mr. Palmer and recommended by the superintendent for approval. Moving on to Section 9, Superintendent's HR Recommendations. 9.1, Employees on Administrative Leave, presented by Dr. Hale. Any comments? 9.2, Deferred Retirement Option Program, presented by Dr. Hale. 9.3, cleared certification requirements and issuance of contracts for 2021-2022, presented by Karen Peak and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 9.4, out-of-field report for 2021-2022, presented by Ms. Peak and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 9.5, employment separations, presented by Dr. Hale and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 9.6, personnel recommendations, presented by Dr. Hale and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 9.7, employee transfers, presented by Dr. Hale and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 9.8, employee suspension, represented by Dr. Hale and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 9.9, employee suspension, presented by Dr. Hale and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 9.10, employee suspension, presented by Dr. Hale and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 9.11, reinstatement, reimbursement of sick leave due to line of duty illness, injury, or medical examination, presented by Dr. Hale and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 9.12, leave without pay, presented by Dr. Hale and recommended by the superintendent for approval. Moving on to Section 10, discussion items. 10.1 would be any items moved from consent. We don't have any at this point in time. Moving on to Section 11, construction program owner's business. We've already given that report for this month. That would be 11.1. 11.2, TPM Program Number 6, Task Order Number 16, Pre-GMP for the roofing and canopy projects at Choctaw and Lewis, presented by Dr. Smith and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 11.3, TPM Program Number 2, Task Order Number 17, Pre-GPM for the roof replacement at Blue Water and Walker, presented by Dr. Smith and recommended by the superintendent for approval. Moving on to 12 would be information technology. Nothing under there at this point in time. 13, attorney's business, 13.1. Mr. McGinnis, you have
No
anything?
report this morning.
Okay. And then under superintendent's business, Mr. Horton, you have anything?
Just two brief things on behalf of the superintendent, just making sure everyone's aware that we were approached a few weeks ago and are thrilled to be able to host through Eglin Air Force Base 2 flyovers for our home football games Friday night. So that would be Crestview Stadium, where they host Choctawhatchee, and Niceville, where they're hosting Godby. We're going to have flyovers of 4 F-15s, and we're going to have a speaker from each at the Niceville game from Eglin Air Force Base, and at Crestview's game from 7 Special Forces. And we've also reached out to Herbert Field if they'd like to send anyone to be represented. So we invite everyone out to those venues early. It's going to be an amazing night. I was just at a Florida-Alabama football game last weekend, and they had a flyover in that stadium. I can only imagine what this is going to sound like, feel like, but it'll be a great night, and it will be conducted in recognition of POW MIA recognition, which occurred actually last week, but this is when we're able to get that window of the flyover, and also military appreciation, because what the military community does for not only those of us who are right here in Okaloosa County, but throughout the nation and around the world. So a great evening to support our military and thank them for the job they're doing. So we invite everybody out there. The second thing I want to do is just give a little bit of information on the emergency rule that was put out yesterday by the State Department of Health. We have a new Surgeon General at the state level, and so Emergency Order 64 DER 21-15 was put out yesterday, and the essence of that emergency order for the functioning of our schools is that when a student or an employee or anybody in the school is positive COVID-19 and has been confirmed by the Department of Health, we go through a contact tracing process where we identify close contacts. And up until yesterday, the requirement through the Department of Health and Department of Education was that all those close contacts, if they had not been vaccinated, those close contacts had to quarantine away from school. And so that has resulted in significant loss of educational time for students. we've quarantined a little over 8,700 students so far this year. This particular emergency rule identified in support of the Parents' Bill of Rights now gives parents the ability to allow their asymptomatic close contact student to remain in school, right? So if they've been identified as a close contact, if they're asymptomatic, the parent can now choose to allow the student to remain in school. Now, I want to make sure, and Mr. Chambers wanted me to make sure, this does not mean we are relaxing any of our protocols, our safety pieces in our schools, our cleaning of our facilities. This is an addition, a change to how we've been operating. Questions about pep rallies may come up, or large group gatherings. All of those pieces are still in place. This is just in response to the emergency rule that was put out yesterday. So what's happening today is our schools are contacting not only the real-time contact trace students that might be coming up, but also those who are currently under quarantine as contact trace students, and making sure those parents individually have that option if their student is asymptomatic to bring them back to school. And so that's going on right now. I think it's important also to know that our policy, our procedures right now are strongly encouraging mask wearing, and we'll continue to do that with these families as they make the choice to come back to school. And we'll also have in place a health or wellness check in the morning as those students arrive to campus to support what we're asking the parents to do as well. And so for all parents, we ask them to conduct wellness checks before sending their students to school. If they're not feeling well, please keep them home. And so in this situation, when these students are coming back, we'll continue to do that and support that with a wellness check at the school. One final thing I'll say, just a reminder of some of the data that we've experienced this year and last year. Of the 10,000 students that we've quarantined last year, of the 8,700 that we've quarantined this year, we've seen at least the evidence that the transmission rate in terms of those quarantined students ending up being positive has been very low. It was 1.3% last year. This year, about 98 of every 100 kids we send home for quarantine end up not becoming positive for COVID. So there's evidence to suggest that many of these kids are not getting COVID. The other thing that I think Mr. Chambers has mentioned before here is because of the time it takes for the Department of Health to identify a positive confirmed case, get it into their database, and report it to the school district, which begins our process of contact tracing, that time averaged last year 5 to 6 days. And so in many cases, those students who were in line to be contact traced, as soon as we found out that information, had been in our schools asymptomatic and participating. And so we actually have some experience with this emergency, this kind of scenario, but we're enacting that right now as required of us to do. And so making calls out to those families today, and we'll have a process in place that conducts a wellness check on students and make sure the staff is aware and notified, because it's important for everyone to be knowledgeable about what's happening in the schools.
Thank you.
Good update, thank you.
And may I make a follow-up? Mr. McInnes, I think I understand that you've had a chance to look at this new emergency rule.
Yes, sir.
And one of the questions I had concerned mandatory compliance in terms of who has to follow this rule. And I think I understood that this is for the entire state of Florida. And could you just speak to that for a moment?
Yes, sir. The rule itself is addressed to the entire state of Florida, and it is it sets forth mandatory procedures that it says shall be instituted to govern control of COVID-19 in public schools.
All right.
So that's how it applies.
Shall be. And so, and based upon your remarks and your analysis, this applies to all school districts in Florida.
That's correct.
All right. Very good. All right. Thank you. Thank you,
All
Madam
right.
Chair.
Any other comment? All right, at this time, we'll have board members' announcements, and we'll start with Ms. Gardner.
Thank you. I really want to encourage our employees to make certain that they read through Catch the Wave. This is such a valuable document, and the departments that are submitting articles, I mean, there really is a wealth of information. And I was speaking to Mr. Mr. Frakes the other day, and do you want to share the news? I love following Peloton. Peloton is very expensive, and when I saw this, it really did catch my eye of the benefit now that our employees can take advantage of
Yes.
through Peloton.
Yes,
So
that's right.
I was going to let you share the
if
great
you
news.
are,
and-
if you have the school district's medical insurance through United Healthcare, you are eligible for this program. You can sign up through the app. Everyone should have received an email. So search your email inbox if you haven't. I pulled mine up actually before the meeting just to review it. So you will receive a code that you can enter in the Peloton system, and it's for a digital membership. It's a $155 annual value. If you already have the membership, like I do, I have the bike, and you get a credit towards that as well. So you can that full membership is a little more expensive than the digital only membership. So it doesn't require a bike. You don't have to have the bike or the treadmill, which are a couple of expensive pieces of equipment in order to participate in this program. And there are many things that's much more, as we were discussing yesterday, much more than just simply biking or running on a treadmill. There are boot camp, strength training, stretching, meditation, yoga, something for everybody essentially there. So I think it's something that's exciting. It's made available to our employees through United Healthcare that they get for a year without any cost to them. They just have to go in, get that code, and they can begin participating. I actually created and really Peloton's, it's kind of the gamification of fitness. There's a social element to it as well. So there are things what they call tags that are out there that are essentially like teams or kind of social things of people that have common interests get together digitally to exercise together and see one another's numbers and compete against one another. I've created #Okaloosa Schools out there, so I'm the only member right now. So I encourage anybody to go out
Well,
there.
you're winning then.
I'm winning. I'm coming in first.
Need
That's
some
absolutely right.
teammates.
So I've created
That's the way
that.
to
So
do
go
it.
out there when you log in. You can search for #Okaloosa Schools. You can join that, or you can create your own. So you could create one for your school or your department or whatever you want to do. It's fun, and I encourage folks to take advantage of it.
And
So.
that would be, I think, fun within schools,
Yes,
that grade
absolutely.
levels maybe can compete against each other.
Absolutely. That's
And
correct.
also, I was reading that it's not just for the employee at the school, but if you have a family membership, like
Yes,
my
that's right.
husband was on mine.
That's right.
He could also.
Right,
So
and if you
anybody
have
that-
if you have the full membership like I do, you have the ability to create multiple profiles on that. So you can not necessarily there, but if, you're right with the digital membership, you can if you have more. You have a husband and wives that are insured. They both can have those have their own digital membership there. So it's
And you're right,
exciting.
you don't have to have the expensive bike or
No, you
treadmill.
does not require the bike or the
Teachers-
treadmill.
And teachers
You can just do old-fashioned walking or running, or there's other things that you can do that it will take you through. And there's a lot of instructors. There's thousands of trainings on there, so it's exciting. It makes injects a little bit of interest into your exercise regimen. We all need that from time to time, is what we do, trying to get stale after a while sometimes. So this is something that can be new and I think can be useful to some folks.
Well, if anyone sees my scores, I was hacked.
Well, and sometimes
Yeah.
our employees need just maybe a 10-minute meditation time. They can
Yes,
take
absolutely.
that, take their phone and just close the door and just
That's
do that
right.
meditation
helpful.
for a few
Wow.
minutes. So.
Absolutely.
Full
Thanks.
disclosure, Ms. Gardner, I've done 2 nights of yoga this week, and it works. It was very easy to get logged into. I'm not in his
You haven't
team
joined the
yet.
team? Okay.
And we're not recommending
Okay.
people tape their phones to their real bikes and ride around with that app right now.
No, I wouldn't do that.
Stationary
Well,
only.
as
right.
quick as things are coming down and changing, I think all of our
Yeah.
employees right now just need to
It's
take
a
it.
it's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's
It is good. It is a good thing. But thanks for sharing that, and
Yes,
I think
ma'am.
more
Thank you.
of our
Thanks for bringing
employees
that
really
everyone's
will.
attention.
That's
And you're
great.
sending an email out to employees to.
Yeah, we have that.
share
We
this
have
thing.
that in the Wave magazine. We can send an email as well, and I will put that Team Okaloosa Schools hashtag out there as well.
Thanks.
All
Nice
right.
job.
All
Awesome.
right.
Thank you.
That's all. Thank you.
That's all? All right. Ms. Evanchik?
Okay. Well, we had a great event Tuesday night for the Okaloosa Public Schools Foundation. We've had this plan for, a year and a half, and COVID kept getting in the way, but we had a great turnout, and I haven't heard numbers yet, but I know we had a very successful, almost 5,000. That's terrific.
Wow.
And we did that, and all that goes to what we call teacher mini grants for those projects that teachers want to get done in their classroom but don't have the funding, and also go to our Take Stock in Children scholarship. So very exciting, and I know that the foundation's going to send some people here to do an update soon. I want to do a shout out to one of our terrific teachers, Miss Brittany Tate, who is a science teacher at Pryor, but she was just named one of the Okaloosa County Emerging Leaders for those under 40 years of age. So I'm very excited for her. She was the only educator in the group of 40 that they chose. So, all right, well, you know, it feels like football weather today, doesn't it?
does.
Right on time. So, Ms. Garner, you know, the last couple of meetings, you know, I'm a Choctaw grad, you're a Fort Walton grad, and you warned me about that game, and I appreciated that, and how that was going to go. And of course, I do want to congratulate Fort Walton Beach on a great event with the Hall of Fame. All that was terrific. However, in a crosstown rivalry, those kind of sentimental things don't really hold on the field. So I just thought I would give you something today. I didn't have a green dot, but I do have a sign that basically tells the score of how that went. And if you flip it the other way, you'll see the record that Choctaw has 29 against Fort Walton. So
Thank you, thank you.
So I
Thank you,
just
Mrs.
thought
Manchak.
I
Thank
would
you,
make
thank
that
thank
for you because you warned me, and so I just wanted
And
to
I
make
just
sure.
want to say, that was an outstanding game. The score did not turn
Exactly.
out the way that I would like for it to turn out.
But it was.
But the players on the field, the sportsmanship was just amazing, being that the hometown rivals had, I mean, it was a fun evening. But and as much as I enjoyed the game, except for the score, the pregame, when we sat there
Yes.
and watched both of the bands, Fort
Yeah.
Walton and Choctaw, stand out there, I mean, and play the national anthem, it's one of those goosebumps
Yep.
moments when you see our schools come together and play, and then we
Mm-hmm.
go out on the field, and again, the sportsmanship was just
Yeah, it was,
outstanding.
it
But
was.
we've got next year.
That's right, it's always
Okay.
next year. But also
thank you.
that rivalry is, I understand, one of
stands
the
for full.
longest ones in the state of Florida. And
Yes.
it's known throughout Florida and the Southeast. And of
It's-
course, everybody knows that we're just kidding. You got to do that with the rivalry. We're lucky to have a city that has two great schools in it that can
Absolutely.
do that. But speaking of football, it was another great night, Friday night, for the school baker that I do represent as a board member. I'm sure most of you paying attention have heard about that. First of all, the Gators went up against a 4A team, and they're a 1A team, and won by 1 point in a thriller. I told the coach that ages me, 49-48 against South Walton. And in that game, one of their players, Caleb Wagner, broke a single game rushing record for the state of Florida, rushing for 535 yards and 6 touchdowns and 23 carries. He broke the record that was held by Heisman Trophy winner out of Alabama, Derrick Henry, who now plays as an All-Pro for the Tennessee Titans. So that was a big night for the Gators, and of course, in all fashion that Mr. Wagner has, he gave credit to his line that let him get those holes, and if you've seen any of the plays, it was fabulous. And I can tell you that Mr. Wagner is a wonderful young man. He's just a junior, which is great, and I'm very proud of him and the Gators for their success. And they actually play tonight. They've moved to a Thursday night. Seems that COVID has also affected having officials at games, so they had to move it to have enough officials to play. So tonight they take on Northview up there in the swamp at Gator Stadium. So I'm excited to go there. So great football time coming up with this wonderful weather too. Thank you.
Lots of excitement. Dr. White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of things very quickly, just again to express appreciation to the superintendent and staff and all the teachers in the school district regarding all of the work for Founders Month, which is established in Florida law, and also regarding our United States Constitution. Very, very important. And then secondly, just to extend appreciation to the superintendent and the school district, and of course our military department for working to secure the flyover. That'll be an outstanding celebration, and I'll be there, and very, very much looking forward to that, very much, and that's all. Thank you.
Okay. And for my part, I certainly will be at the high school I represent Friday night, Niceville, for the flyover there in the game. So I know it will be an exciting time, and I appreciate all the coordination that had to go on behind the scenes to get that accomplished. And I do have 2 additional announcements. One is that Sunday, October the 3rd, will be Wreaths Across America. And just so you know, this is sponsored by Fudpuckers, and it will be at Fudpuckers from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. in Destin. And it will largely encompass the teach component of that traveling monument. And it will be teaching the American mission, sharing information about the veterans and those who serve our country, and about how every American can play their role in honoring them. And it just, of course, it touches my heart that it's happening on a weekend or on a time just as we happen to have lost one of my very all-time all-star teachers, Patty Kroger, who, as you know, she and Chester own Fudpuckers. And I had the great privilege of having her on my staff at Destin Middle School. So if you can, go Sunday, October the 3rd from 11 to 6 p.m. and see that exhibit. Patty would have loved it. And the last thing I will announce today, October the 10th, is Niceville Strong's Community Prayer Rally at 5:15 at the Northwest Florida State College Amphitheater. So if you can, go and participate in the Community Prayer Rally with Niceville Strong. And that is all that I have. So at this time on Monday night, we would have public comment. We don't know about those yet. And I'll ask if anyone in the audience has anything they would like to announce. Any department, any staff member? No? If there's nothing else, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.